When you realize how effective carnivore is and how demonized it has been, you begin to see how much of what we have been taught is not true. You become sharper through the many scams in life. You are willing to question conventional orthodoxies using your brain and life experience. Hello, friends. It's the Carnivore Rabbi. A rabbi is a teacher and source of inspiration for all people. And this channel is dedicated to inspiring and guiding carnivores of all faiths. Welcome. What is the absolute best benefit of the carnivore diet? It is not weight loss. It is not better skin. It is not even more energy. It is not the money you save from not snacking and eating. It is the mental clarity. It is the disappearance of brain fog. It is the supercharge you get in your mind when you give yourself the proper human diet. Any longtime carnivore will tell you this. Example, I'm a writer, both as a rabbi and as an author of books. I used to aim to write 500 words a day. That was the Ernest Hemingway style. And it was often a struggle. 2 weeks after starting carnivore, I was hitting 1,000 words a day in the same amount of time, if not less. It was flowing. Words were flowing. Still that way. I'm still that way. I also wanted to start a YouTube channel. In fact, I'd wanted to start a YouTube channel back since 2011. This channel, not the name Carnivore Rabbi, but just my own name, was registered in 2011. And I just delayed and delayed. And it wasn't as if I had nothing to talk about. I'm a rabbi. I talk for a living. I just didn't have the energy or the focus to do it. A year after starting carnivore, I had so much excess energy and passion that I knew what I wanted for my channel. The carnivore diet not only gave me greater energy, it gave me a clarity about a message I want to send and share with the world. I bet you have a message you want to share with the world as well. So what are you waiting for? And if you're not already a carnivore, embracing this way of eating will give you the energy and inspiration to get going. In fact, we've got carnivores in their 60s and 70s with their own YouTube channels that are knocking it out of the ballpark. It's incredible. Another thing I did, I started lifting weights again. I had a roommate in college who was an incredible weightlifter. He threw discus for the Stanford track team, and at that time he ate 5 power bars a day. I used to make fun of him for that, and it's not something I'd recommend now. But when we were in college, I asked him to help me get going. I was just a skinny guy. I was a tennis player, not for Stanford, but he said, okay. And we did it. And it was wonderful. I felt better, looked better. And then after a while, I gave up lifting. I would occasionally start up for a week or two, then nothing. 10 years of straight nothing. Again, about 2 weeks into carnivore, I had to get back into the gym to lift. And I have kept going, even more now. In fact, I just talked to a guy, the interview will be published soon, who put on 30 pounds of lean muscle after losing 140 pounds of fat over the last 3 years as a carnivore. Incredible. That's better than a miracle drug. So what is happening? What does carnivore do to our brains? The first thing it does is decimate inflammation. Mental illness is an inflamed brain. Yes, there are other factors, but that is the big one. And what causes inflammation? Carbs. When you cut out the carbs, you reduce inflammation. You are calmer, more focused, less agitated. And then you add more cholesterol and fat. The brain craves both. First, cholesterol. We all know the cholesterol myth. It's so bad. Turns out, as we have talked about before, people with higher cholesterol live longer. There's no real study that has shown a direct connection between high LDL cholesterol and heart disease. Again, I'm not a doctor, and this is not medical advice, but plenty of doctors have pointed this out. What cholesterol does is exert a calmness in the body. It's potent. If you want to get into the science, look at it. It's all over YouTube. And then there's fat. The brain craves fat. We run more efficiently on ketones, and fat and fasting produce ketones. Fatty meat is the best thing for your brain. The protein feeds your muscles, and the fat feeds your brain. In fact, some anthropologists speculate that the search for fat is what led to the creation of tools and ultimately grew our brains. We wanted the fat, not just the leftover protein that our scavenger ancestors ate. We figured out ways to crack open the skulls of dead animals and get out the brains, which are full of fat and cholesterol. And when we ate the brains of animals, that fed our own brains. The Inuit prize the fat when they hunt, going right for the fattiest meats and organs. And interestingly, dogs actually benefit from the protein. So we have a symbiotic relationship. We prize fat, dogs prize protein, and that symbiotic relationship may actually have contributed to the domestication of dogs. We gave them the lean meats, and they guarded our encampments at night while we slept. This also had a positive effect on human beings because we got more sleep. And when we got more sleep, we increased the size of our brains. This is a theory. No one has been able to prove this, but my friend, Reverend Tony Jones, describes this in his book, The God of Wild Places, and also in the interview I did with him. More cholesterol and more fat and more sleep. Now, just above, I briefly mentioned ketones. Ketosis is incredibly powerful. Sometimes we longtime carnivores forget this because we are so frequently in ketosis. It's become the norm. But ketosis creates a calm, mellow, but extremely focused state of mind. It is less anxious and more able to concentrate. And focusing on one thing at a time reduces the stress of worrying about everything else. There is also what I call a mellow high with ketosis. Why does this work? It has to do with a better GABA to glutamate ratio. Glutamate is like a gas pedal in the brain, and sugar pushes down on it. When you reduce sugar, carbs, you reduce that push. And then the ketones increase GABA production. And GABA is like brakes for the brain. So when you consume fatty meat, you're calm but focused. Now, these are all physical factors, what's going on in the brain physically, but there are deep psychological ones as well. Carnivore makes life more simple. I heard a great teaching recently from Father Richard Rohr. He said that the first half of life is about addition. The second half is about subtraction. And what could be simpler than the carnivore diet? We simplify. We realize life is not about accumulating and getting more and more. We realize it is about experiencing and enjoying what we have, about the simple, meaningful things, appreciating beauty, relationships, gratitude. We are happier when we are not constantly desiring more. We are happier when we are clear about what we need and want. And what could be more clear and simple than the carnivore diet? Food can be psychologically fraught. It can cause anxiety, fear, regret, so many emotions, and mental illness. As carnivores, we bypass that. We nourish ourselves with what God and nature intended, and that makes us happy. It just does. You have to do it to believe it, but it works. And there is a subtler kind of mental clarity as well. I'll phrase it simply. You begin to see through a lot of the BS in the world. When you realize how effective carnivore is and how demonized it has been, you begin to see how much of what we have been taught is not true. You become sharper through the many scams in life. You are willing to question conventional orthodoxies using your brain and life experience. One example I like to cite is my friend Rick Rodriguez, the 40-year carnivore. He may even be watching this right now. When I interviewed Rick, I was so inspired by his directness and clarity. He answers questions, He gives his opinion and thoughts succinctly, and you know it is authentic and honest. I like to think it's the opposite of the way most politicians speak. And I think many long-time carnivores speak and live in this way. Another example is the bear, Owsley Stanley, one of the most fascinating individuals of the 20th century. His biography is incredible. I did a video about him. He was a carnivore for 55 years. And he wrote about and answered questions in a long-deleted blog from the early 2000s about carnivore. He's crystal clear in his thinking and incredibly funny and simple and easy to understand. I have collected what he wrote on carnivore in a PDF. It's incredible reading. If you want it, just tap the link in the description or the first comment, and I'll send it right to you. Supercharge your brain with the proper human diet.